1 million deportations a year. I'll break down this number that everyone keeps repeating, but few have really digested. You'll see why this number isn't a goal, but a trap, and why it will expose itself. Once you understand the simple arithmetic behind it, you won't be able to hear the word million the way you used to. Secondly, I'll explain why it was specifically Russian speakers who got scared. Not just any migrants, but our migrants. Your neighbors there in Brighton, San Francisco, Los Angeles. Those who considered themselves good, proper, legal. You will understand why it was their sense of security that collapsed first, and why doing everything legally stopped being a protection. The administration says that first and foremost, criminals are deported from the country, meaning only those who have committed crimes according to the law. They are sent out of the country without being asked. And also criminals who have done something illegal either in the country they came from or already here in the United States of America. Personally, I support deporting everyone who deceived the country and ended up here as a result of that deception. But I understand that politically it's more convenient and appealing to say that we are primarily going after those who have committed murder and rape, major thefts, and things like that. So not only did they come here without permission, but they are also by no means law-abiding citizens. And thirdly, this is actually the reason why I'm making this episode. I'll answer the question that stumps people. Why did Trump's approval on immigration, his strongest topic, collapse? And why did his own Republicans and independents start turning away from him? Here's a hint. It's not that he did too little, but that the machine once stopped choosing. And closer to the end, I'll tell you about one consequence of this policy that almost no one talks about, and which I think in the Kremlin, yes, in the Kremlin, not in Washington, they're quietly rubbing their hands, but all in due time. If you're interested not in who was kicked out, but in how the logic works that decides who exactly to grab, then, well, that's what they're silent about, and that's what we're talking about today. Let's start with the numbers. So, 1 million a year sounds like determination, right? Like bringing order. And you know what nobody actually argues against here? Against deporting those who entered the country illegally. This isn't taking away from others, it's restoring the rule. Criminals, those who broke the law, should be deported. The majority of Americans have agreed with this, and between us, any reasonable person would agree with this. Not everyone is reasonable, but any reasonable person would agree. But now here's the arithmetic, the very thing that changes everything. To deport 1 million people a year, there simply aren't enough criminals. There just aren't that many of them, right? You say they're being kicked out. At the moment, there are about 90,000, maybe 70,000, maybe 100,000 serious criminals among the illegal immigrants. But the plan is for 1 million. Where are they going to get the other 900,000 criminals from? And this is where the deportation of criminals ends, and what we're really here for begins. When the agency has a quota, 3,000 people a day. That's the actual number set for ICE. It stops looking for who's guilty. It starts looking for who's easiest to catch. Those are completely different goals. Those are completely different people. Of course, I don't want to, so to speak, make that connection or draw any analogies. But in the times of Iosif Potanin, Stalin, there was a set number of citizens in each region who had to be caught and imprisoned. There it was done for a different purpose, namely to keep the population in a state of constant terror, but at the same time without undermining the ability to produce tanks, airplanes, and other things that were very important for the authorities. So there were quotas, which led to the situation where, at the end of the month, well, let's say there weren't enough people, they would go out into the street and grab them. Only then would they press charges. Whoever they caught, they'd handle later. By the way, just so you know, here's an interesting detail. So Nikita Sergeyevich Khrushchev constantly wrote letters to Stalin, asking for permission to arrest, imprison, and execute more people. He constantly wrote such letters. So you see, in the Stalin-Khrushchev pair, it turns out Stalin was much more humane. He caught and killed just as many as he did, as many as were needed to intimidate the people. But Khrushchev suggested more because he thought it was a very interesting, useful, and fascinating activity. I mean, torturing and shooting people. Yes, of course, the goals are different in the Soviet Union and here, but the problems with this approach remain. I'm talking only about the approach. If, let's say, you're the head of some department or a company or something like that, and you need to arrest and deport 1,000 people by the end of the quarter.
То
So the quarter ends and you only have 750. What do? That means you send people out, raise the alarm, there's a raid, and another 150 get arrested. You round up another 250, right? 750 plus 250 equals 1,000. Just in case, 252, so you have a couple in reserve. Because that's how it has to be, that's what I don't like. And do you know what happens in reality? And the one who's guilty, the criminal, he hides. He has fake documents. He doesn't show up for appointments. He knows how to disappear. Catching him is expensive and takes a long time. Well, it's tedious. But the one who's reachable, the one who's right here. He overstayed his visa, but he lives at the address he provided himself. He applied for asylum and is going to a hearing. He went to a scheduled check-in at Vi. You don't need to look for him. He came on his own and signed the logbook. Here he is, sitting on the bench. And when your quota is based on headcount, not on guilt, who are you going to take? Well, who? He came here, he's already sitting here, right? You don't need to go anywhere. Here he is, in the hallway. He's waiting. That's why Russian speakers were the first to get scared, because they come. The majority, most of them are educated. Generally, they're law-abiding. They fled from lawlessness. And that way from 2022 to 2024 was hundreds of thousands of people. Those who left Putin, the war, and the draft. They entered the U.S. through legal channels, parole, various programs, CBP-1, asylum applications, and then those channels were closed. They closed them retroactively, and people who entered by the rules, which were canceled after, so to speak, after they arrived, those rules were canceled. Suddenly they found themselves in the very category that's now being targeted. The numbers don't lie. Deportations of Russians. In 2022, 58 people. So in 2023, 222. A bit more, yes. In 2024, 455. In 2026, the process is actually speeding up. The ministry got its own planes, well, so they don't have to depend on charters. This is no longer a threat in the air. This is a flight schedule. And now I'm going to say something I've been holding back until this moment. What is happening has a name. A boring one. An engineering one. But once you get to know it, you stop seeing cruel policy in it, and you see something even more cruel. It's called a mechanism, cold like a conveyor belt. And this mechanism explains not only why there are enough honest people, it explains why even Trump's own voters turned away from him. Didn't that surprise you? At first, 80 or 90% supported his policies. And now it's about immigration and not just policy. Less than 50, I think, 42 or 43. The very same people who just a year ago were applauding. They haven't become any softer. They've seen exactly what I'm telling you right now. And in the very end, this same name will lead us to a consequence that I think quietly pleases people in Moscow. Well, let's get back to this thought in a minute. The name is simple. Selection error. In English, selection effect. It's probably not even an error, but rather the influence of selection. When you evaluate success by what is easy to measure, the system starts chasing not what is right, but what is convenient and accessible, right? Police who are paid based on the number of arrests catch not the most dangerous person, but the easiest one to catch. Well, in my opinion, this is observable, right? A school that is judged by its average score, what does it do? Does it start teaching better? No, it gets rid of the weaker students. They teach them, give people a number, and they will deliver that number at any cost. And often at the expense of meaning. 1 million a year is just such a number. It was set to show determination, political determination. But it quietly rewrote the task. Instead of finding the guilty, hit the number. And the machine obediently carried what was easier to lift. Not an underground gangster, but a family man at the parking lot at work. Not a criminal with a fake passport, but a person who honestly came to his appointment, who, was late for it. He's at fault, of course he's at fault, but he's not as guilty as the one who, right? Now, why did the approval rating collapse? That's the most interesting part. Look at the numbers. In March, emigration was a positive topic for Trump, right? That's what it's called, isn't it? The approval rating, although it dropped, was still +4, but by June it was -8. The approval rating on emigration dropped to around 40, 44. Disapproval reached 50, 52. Support for the deportation program itself was 50, 59 in February and 40, 49 in the summer. Deportations. The overall rating is around 40, and most importantly, 61% Americans say that immigration is what determines their opinion of the president. And why did it turn around? Because Americans voted for a scalpel. Well, exactly, to cut out, so to speak, just what was needed. First crime, then everything else. But what they got was a net that scoops up everything it catches. Although, in a way, everything is correct. All those who came here illegally should be deported from the country. That's right, isn't it? But the system was set up so that first we would kick out, pull out, arrest, and send away the worst ones. And so people started getting caught in this net. And of course, the other party, the second one, immediately started making noise about it all over the world. It's impossible to look at these things calmly. Children left without parents, people taken from churches, from hospitals, after protections for sensitive locations was removed. Previously, it was forbidden to appear there, in courts and hospitals and in other places that are, so to speak, centers. I don't know, like churches. Green card holders, that is, legal residents, are detained for no reason. Everything is decided, as always, independently. And in elections, I mean. Among them, now 59% are against deportation. So the most advantageous, the most important Republican cause turned out to be wrong, because the plan was set up incorrectly. Republicans are for it, Democrats are against it. And the middle, the very one that decides the elections, swayed. And it didn't sway out of pity for the illegals. It swayed because of a simple instinct. If today they're grabbing those who came by the rules, what's the guarantee they won't take me tomorrow? Fear stopped being something foreign. But someone else's fear doesn't move the ratings. Your own fear does. This is the promised consequence that few mention. Who exactly is being expelled by this general movement, this general crackdown? Including people who fled from Putin. Those who refused to go to his war, those who face prison in Russia for their words or a trench for their dissent. And when the American system loads them onto a plane according to orders and sends them back, who do you think it's helping? An unexpected but pleasant gift. Putin has dreamed for years of bringing these people back under his control, the dissenters, the educated, those who escaped. He couldn't lure them back himself, but someone else's quota will do it for him, for free on scheduled flights. By deporting an anti-Putin refugee, Trump is not restoring order in America. He is returning to the Kremlin those whom the Kremlin has lost. This isn't about the border, it's about that mechanism, launched for one purpose. Quietly, it works for something completely different. And here is my main principle. That's what this channel exists for in the first place. Deport. Deport those who entered illegally. That's normal. Everything's correct, right? This is not taking someone else's property. It means you snuck in here. We didn't let you into our house. We didn't even discuss it. You just climbed in. There's no argument. But as soon as the government, chasing numbers, starts grabbing people who had rights, people showing up for legitimate check-ins, people detained by mistake, legal residents, it crosses the line, it takes away freedom. From someone whose freedom should not be taken away, it should not have been, and it doesn't matter that the goal is noble, I absolutely support the goal. But if you take something from an innocent refugee just for a nice number indiscriminately, the goal is bad, period. But I'm finishing, so let's not end with fear, right? I'm finishing with hope, because in those very polls, there's good news hidden. Americans have changed course. Not the party, not the court, just ordinary people, with their own intuition. They saw the difference between order and arbitrariness, and they said, no, no, this doesn't suit us. Gentlemen, even though they believe that these people should be evicted, they are not satisfied with this. They don't want mistakes. This is freedom. This is freedom. The kind that works. Not when everything is correct from the top, but when mistakes are noticed from below. Today, you have trained exactly this skill. Now, when you hear $1 million a year, you will ask, not whether it's a lot or a little, but how are they going to do it? And who exactly? And what will this lead to? And who is asking this question? You can't just blindly drive him into the net anymore. If the analysis was helpful, ladies and gentlemen, give it a like. It helps a voice like this get through. On this channel, I cover one important piece of news every day, and I show what's really behind it. If you're interested not in what happened, but in how the mechanisms work, the ones that decide for us, the ones that decide for us. Also, check out the second channel, it's the Roadmap to Freedom. There, twice a week, we dig deep. Well, I don't know how much we'll manage to dig there, maybe up to DeCorno. For those who like to think, in the next episode, a big question, is it even possible to set a headcount quota for the government? Well, or something like that. And why does any number sooner or later end up catching the honest person instead of the guilty one? The link is below the video. Come and think together. Come and think together. See you soon.